The beginning of the Trinity knot started with blame, caused by fear of rejection of a person or thing whom is perceived as an authority figure that you respect. I wanted to touch on an area that religion and New Age offers for inspiration and help to overcoming stress and anxiety. Just a reminder, human Trinity, soul controls, mind directs, and serves. Body does as it's told for as long as it can. Meditation is said to help in healing, especially in mental related issues. 8 things are said to be therapeutic effects of using it. They are the reversing of the aging process, at least mentally. Rapid memory recall will improve. Creativity increase, allowing for new ideals. Less anxiety and stress. A decreased need for substance abuse because the stress and anxiety is lessened. It protects against mental health conditions. And it processes emotions better because you know more about the human trinity. The elderly also feel less lonely, and because they're more aware of the body, the soul will not ask as much and therefore reduce the inflammation that are linked to genes. All of these are aspects of language and perception. Mind has knowledge only. Soul creates, and when it's not, it has no incentive to do anything until the next problem comes along. Its language is made up of the 5 senses. However, it must focus its creativity on one at a time. It must seek out the mind if it needs answers to possibilities, and it thrives on those. Those possibilities are usually created when what it senses has changed. The body has its own communication through feelings. It tells you when it's reaching the limits of its capabilities or needs something. Learned behavior is rules that help all 3 to function without constant communication during times of chaos, when reaction has to be relied upon. But the Trinity works best when all 3 are aware of the roles they play. Mind communicates with both, while the soul is only dimly aware of the body's language. Meditation allows the soul to learn from the mind and, in the process, become more aware of the body. It must take the initiative to learn the body's language. While the mind knows it best, it is not in control. It serves the soul. If the soul's not aware of the limitations of the body, it can push it too far. Meditation will help the soul understand and creating new possibilities through communication, just as we, when we exchange ideas with others, also get new ideas and possibilities. I'm going to attempt showing first why I think meditation and prayer are basically the same, yet serves different purposes. At the same time, it shows how the rule created to hide the soul, creating a negative and positive, has damaged the abilities that meditation can help, and possibly discover the rule and remove it, or at least adjust it. Some might smirk on both extremes to think this is an area that both sides use. Let me point out, a label is not the act. You are assigned a label at birth. In fact, 3 names is traditional today at birth. Then they dehumanizing multiple labels, lumping all into a group based on accident of birth. That leads to stress. Does this mean you must disown what's good or discredit the truth because of the illusion created by blame? The name must be more powerful than looking and learning that there's actually an individual in front of you. Use your creativity to own or discard what you want, but don't deny truth. The first rule is what caused us to separate what is fundamentally the same thing, focusing on these small differences. Prayer is meditation. It's only directed to limit possibilities. The action is no different than New Age meditation, only the focus to limit possibilities, so that it focuses only on what is known. The rule in place so long ago is to limit possibilities, but the soul needs meditation. The mind still serves the soul's needs. It must always serve. It can only offer 2 possibilities, and lacking what the soul has can only recreate the past by embracing one of those 2 possibilities. Religion, all three that have had arrogant people that damage both sides, needs to realize there has always been one truth. God, teacher, soul, student, equals lesson learned. The lesson was cause and effect. Trauma makes the effect immediate and have more force when tied to words used at the time. Cause introduces possibilities, many beyond imaginings. Good and bad, good or evil, they're only morphing what the first rule started out to hide. Cause and effect. Cause is still hidden. Effect is the only aspect that can't be ignored. And this leaves us only two choices. We did this to ourselves. Clearly, natural disasters were not our fault. God is infallible. Thus, we are being punished for something we did. All we ever did was use what God gave us. In fear, someone stood up to offer a possible answer. Desperate to take it, the rest embraced this. The alternative is we have no control. Death was horrendous, and the cry from all around us was, why would God do this? This led those in charge to realize they were in danger. At the time, they pretended to be gods in control of everything. They never were. Now they feared the repercussions that this lie was going to be revealed. First Band-Aid was good or bad, but then something unforeseen happened. In groupthink, people once again did something. Society's leaders failed again. And we got the first martyr. Someone died, but they did not sin. The death was from using his creativity, awakening it in others. The repercussions led the mind of one so arrogant. And then he finally asked the soul what could be done. First rule was to limit possibilities. This was good and bad. That fixed it once before. This time, it is a human disaster, not a natural disaster. It was an attack on an aspect of soul by society. Free will was being attacked. Souls do understand that was an attack. It was not on creativity or free will. Both are really the soul. Only the mind has created the illusion. Humanity did this to itself, lacking knowledge of why, and the mind is limited in what it can offer because of the rule, because of blame. Good stays the same. That can never change since it's God. Evil replaces bad. Now, God must have an equal, but we can't acknowledge that. No soul wouldn't do this to itself if it had all the information. We, unlike God, do not have omniscience, can't have the knowledge of why it was done, the intent behind the actions. The blame was only the start, and it takes a long time before someone so arrogant gains enough power to mess things up. Then humility washes over us in the aftermath, but that rule starts to slide to the next arrogant period. Consequences are the only way to maintain humility, and we will not embrace it. You remove that rule and focus on the cause of why humanity is doing this to itself, you might be able to understand why we are continuing with all these trinities. But natural disasters only rejuvenate the rule in the next generation. That's why it's the only one that's imposed on us. It doesn't seem to go away. Humanity did not do those things. But why would God? Anything bad that happens must be done by someone that makes no mistakes. Blame is to hide we are doing this to ourselves. Natural disasters makes this answer plausible. It was the first excuse we used. We clearly did not do that to ourselves. We never did. Society only offers a one-size-fits-all approach. It always will. Arrogant people focus only on today, fail to see wisdom in the past, or how they might damage something needed in the future. A problem must be fixed. This fixed it before. It'll fix it again. That's all arrogant people will care about. Let the future fend for itself. Sometimes there is no explanation. it just simply will not change. When you can't find one, you just ask the question, but never consider what is important. What did it lead us to do, however? Did the outcome teach us something we needed to know? Doesn't matter why it was done. If out of creativity you discovered something, then it served a positive purpose. Once you accept God as a God of souls, it's easier to understand that there is a purpose. However, His goal is the soul. The material world is a preschool, and only a few lessons are taught during preschool. My answer is humility. Creativity is good. We have free will. It must be humbled. The rule makes free will a threat. Conformity is the only answer. That is a one-size-fits-all answer. It's been tried, and every time it leads to human disasters. It always will. It just swings back and forth between the two extremes. The past only offers two possibilities. You're either the victim or the abuser. We must be taught how we affect things, even when we intend to do good. Think before you act. Is the action you are considering the best choice, or would you do more damage by doing something instead of just letting the consequences happen? Arrogant people will not think. They will not seek out the advice of the soul who is creative. The mind is a rule. It implements the rule. Only when the consequences are so bad will you finally seek the soul's advice. And it is the soul that is the spark of divinity God grants us. You want to reach Him, it's through that spark. We know the past. The future is created by the soul. The past can only teach learned behavior patterns. This will show you that often society is not capable of fixing this. Often, like natural disasters, the only answer is to surrender and admit to do anything is far worse than allowing individuals to damage themselves further. Free will makes one-size-fits-all answers unworkable. It always will, because individuals have a path to follow. It might be the wrong choices, but they must be allowed to make them. God will teach humility, eventually, but only we can learn how to maintain the balance in society. Humility always drains away because of the Trinity knot. In private is usually the way meditation works, but some people do use organized forums to teach you how to do it, as well as tell you why it is beneficial to individuals. Same as organized religion. Its purpose is to instruct as well as be an outlet for our social nature. In a community, we get recharged like a drug. Natural disasters showed us together we can do far more things. But it also requires us to refuse to do anything that we want to do if it's going to hurt others around us. In those forums, it is structured just as prayer is, just a little less. The focus is not on claiming they have answers, it is to seek answers. We are social constructs, and what natural disasters taught us was, in a society, we can do more than an individual, overcome greater obstacles. When the rules are so strict that the mind can't freely approach the soul unless the chaos is so severe, it can't deal with it using its own resources. Then it must approach the soul. But careful what it reveals. In meditation of any kind, it's taking a break from chaos. Then the mind and soul can stop reacting and communicate. Language of perception must be learned even by those two. Intimate relationships is as complex as the mind and soul of everyone, each individual. It's an attempt of four aspects, mind and body of two people, to unify a common language. If you haven't learned how the soul and mind communicate within you, then you are never going to put the effort needed into an intimate relationship. Body will always just react. The mind will react only if the rules in place will not grant it a path to seek the soul's advice. In communication, those two aspects can discover how to communicate. Some will use this, harness it to make themselves the focal point. Their well-being must come first because it is perceived they have more knowledge than you. Some in the past even claimed direct access to the divine. Oddly enough, they are telling the truth. The soul is the spark of the divine. It is how we communicate. While we are social creatures, God doesn't need us to go to a building to visit Him. To insist on this shows that the mind is doing things it was never meant to do. Notice, however, that in the ideal of organized religion, this is how the mind perceives the soul inside the human Trinity. They must visit rarely. God is everywhere, yet you got to go to a building, confess what you did, and then you can go away and do it again. Because in their mind, that's how it works. The soul is heaven. Thus, the mind is the illusionary hell. But that was not the reality. The mind serves all souls. Must do is remove the rule. Notice another thing. People talk of compassion. Would deny those damaged the full knowledge of what they are about to do. The argument is they are in turmoil. How dare you add to this with the truth? That is the rule. The mind is reacting. You have free will. You will own it. And eventually your actions will be revealed. By then the action might be unfixable. You can only live with the shame and horror of what you did. Then, those people that showed you a sick form of compassion will no longer seem so harmless. Unless the shame makes you place a new rule that will further isolate the soul from the reality of what it's done. But it would also limit more possibilities. Meditation can be in silence, walking, or even writing. In fact, I suggest engaging in creativity of any type is a way of, because you have to focus, and it does create creativity. You focus all three. The mind has to answer the questions that are being asked to it, while the body is actually doing the creativity part, and the soul is directing both. So you are learning how to communicate, even if you're not actually being silent and sitting on the floor listening to music or something of that nature. It can be in any way that would direct all three to work toward a common goal. Often in talking or writing, ideas I never considered have come out. You do this because in a group, your soul gains inspiration. It serves you, and thus serves God. But God is not remote. Only an arrogant mind that has so many rules that it must never approach the soul would start to pretend that God is only found without. The natural disasters was the reason the first soul hid. It became a hidden God. We chose to make God unapproachable. With the rules we put in place, that has hidden the soul. In language or perception, we have created negative and positive. In meditation, you will learn how to communicate and find ways to unite the three aspects of the human Trinity. The body does have a language. It does tell you when it's in pain. The mind knows this best. But it serves as selfish master that has placed rules that will not allow the mind to approach it unless it must. Since the mind's not suffering, but the body is, it's not its problem. Ever notice that in how the people around you that are your boss tends to do the same thing to you? The soul must learn it, but it will only learn what's needed to access creativity. Meditation will help the soul understand it is not the body that is wanting to damage itself, but the mind and soul that ignore all but the most necessary needs. It's the lesson God needs us to learn, and it's the rule that is protecting us from learning it. Learn about yourself, how the three work together, and you will find that while the chaos is still all around, it is not infecting your personal Trinity. The rule that was started with blame replaced cause and effect, with good and bad. It also has led to the pettiness that in society there must be some excluded from our groups. It's made dogma have more power to the blind followers, those I've labeled the broken soul. I am not talking of religion. That is a label. We are talking about people, individuals. You dehumanize them down to a label. The worst things happen when you no longer see people, only words. Do you think about stomping a bug? Bring people down to a label during arrogant times? It's easy to think of those that disagree with you as evil. Since they have no soul, it's acceptable to do anything, just like you would to vermin. There is a reason during war some of the worst tragedies happen. The focus is on hating people, bringing them down to a label. They are a country instead of people. It's also hard to forget for both sides the horrors of that time and move beyond that. In humility, they can be healing, but it is not easy to consider the possibility you could have just as much fault as they did in the war. And it's not the country. They are people, just as diverse as your own country. Don't place the face of a leader as the people that he represents, or she. Understand, during times of arrogance, many are living in the past. It's easy to forget the people that damaged you are likely dead. The people that have replaced them are not the same. They grew up with you, saw and experienced the same intolerance, if not the same damage as you did. To forget this will only recreate the damage. One generation failed on the other side. You are now doing the same thing. There is a saying, you become what you hate. That is exactly what a predator and professional victim will do. Not a broken soul, but they don't think. They follow blindly and fulfill the needs of the other two. The professional victim will hide behind the ideal they are doing things to help you. The predator will not attempt to hide it. The goal is to enrich themselves. They don't care about those around them except how you can be used to gain everything they want, not just what they need for a happy life. And Lord help you if you have no use for them. Intent will matter. Do not judge another. To you, they will all be predators if they've hurt you. To them, they will likely perceive themselves to be victims, because we are all damaged by others. Be humble enough to see they are only different in perception. Let God do the judging. Let society do punishment. But never let society embrace the concept of situational justice. That leads to distrust in society, that punishment isn't balanced. That's what changed good and bad to good and evil. This rule has power because it's tied to the body's remembered pain of the trauma event, as well as those words spoken by those before, during, or right after the event. Regardless of the intent, it does not have to rule your future. They meant to take from you. What's missed is the soul must surrender. Body and mind can be broken, but soul must surrender. It never surrenders to individuals. Who it surrenders to is the mind and body. They will do anything to avoid the remembered pain. After all, they are of the material world and will remain once the soul leaves preschool. Only with humility will you understand we are not even at the first step of learning in the mortal world. A balanced soul will not be contained on earth. This rule is in place to limit possibilities. And without possibilities, the soul still exists, but it has no incentive to do anything, unless the mind brings something to its attention, since the rule is to make sure that everything around it is not creating possibilities through the language of perception. It's getting all it needs. Why do more? The natural disasters that once had no purpose as one. It's the only way to reset all the rules imposed in society and the family structure back to the original rule, created from blame. This rule is humanity's creation, and only humanity can remove it. Consider the soul in pain and suffering wants to return to the past. The mind serves its master and shows it the answer it seeks. The rule is adjusted to recreate this time. Problem is, those that once helped the mind are gone. Now it's alone without guidance from an adult or free access to the soul. There is a reason what we see during arrogant time be people following blindly and society taking on the role of parents. The mind is not creative. It never was meant to do this alone. It recreates only. It has knowledge, not the desire to know. It will adjust it, but like I said, it only gets two possibilities. If it doesn't want to be the victim, it has to take on the role of the abuser. But it might perceive itself as doing this for the better good, the greater good. What we see is reminiscent of the time before Age of Possibilities, all around us. Around age 10, children become exposed to others, away from the family union. After trauma, the mind will show them that time because that's what it needs to know. To have choice, you must have the option of not acting. Meditation is an act of humility. Even prayer serves the soul, but it's hidden because the focus is to find the solution that will keep the soul hidden. It creates a form of humility, but it demands you surrender free will. At the same time, it insists we must have it. The soul needs possibilities. It no longer wants them. Evil is not without, and it's only perception. Soul has only enough information to enact a response. Create a concept of evil. To it, from its perspective, because all it's getting is what the mind is telling it, those that disagree have attacked its Trinity. When in reality, its evil is represented by the mind. The soul is still within those people. While this same illusion plays out in the mind as well, it's only looking outwards. It knows its own soul is not evil. However, it sees any that engage in free will it doesn't like as having no soul. Soul fights soul, and no one understands that it's always been soul fighting mind. Two chess players that have no idea of what they are really doing to themselves because they will not talk. All I've been saying, the positive aspects are real with meditation. Doctors advocate the need to keep the mind engaged far longer for the elderly. It's not exactly quantity of life because we are all going to die eventually. But I believe if you can keep the mind engaged and the soul able to create, they will be much happier. And they will also be more inclined to do what's needed to keep the body healthy so they can live as long as possible. It is no longer focused only on exercise of the body as far as helping us stay healthy. What science can't do is prove existence of soul. And doctors can only deal with the two things it can't prove. Science works only with what it can prove. And soul can't exist without the body. Even the soul is unaware it is separate from mind and body until the three learn to communicate. It's creativity that creates the last two senses, that allows the soul to interpret how the body and the mind works in union with it. Necessity is the mother of invention. This is what meditation can facilitate. And just remember, meditation is not always stationary. It's about learning to communicate with the Trinity, but it does not need you to stay in one position. It doesn't even need you to close your eyes. All it needs is discipline, a focus that all three can do in activity. If walking or writing is what works while you think, then use it. It's about learning to focus inward. It doesn't matter how, because we are all unique.